When I woke up, the other side of the bed is cold. My fingers stretch out, seeking Prim's worth, but finding only the rough canvas cover of the mattress. She must have had bad dreams and climbed in with our mother. Of course she did. This is the day of the reaping. I prop myself up on one elbow. There is enough light in the bedroom to see them. My little sister Prim, curled up on her side, cocooned in my mother's body, their cheeks pressed together. In sleep, my mother looks younger, still worn, but not so beaten down. Prim's face is as fresh as a raindrop, as lovely as a primrose for which she was named. My mother was very beautiful too once, or so they tell me. Sitting at Prim's knees guarding her is the world's ugliest cat. Mashed nose, half one ear missing, eyes of the color of rotten squash. Prim named Buttercup, insisting that his muddy yellow coat matched the bright flower. He hates me, or at least distrusts me. Even though it was a year ago, I think he still remembers how I tried to drown him in a bucket when Prim brought him home. Scrawny kitten, belly swollen with worms, crawling with fleas. The last thing I needed was another mouth to feed. But Prim begged so hard, cried even, I had to say. It turned out okay. My mother got rid of the vermin, and he was born mouser, even catching the occasional rat. Sometimes when I clean a kill, I feel Buttercup the entrails. He has stopped hissing at me. Entrails. No hissing. This is the closest we'll ever come to love. I swing my legs up the bed and slide into my hunting boots, saddle leather that is molded to my feet. I put on trousers, a shirt, tuck my long dark braid up in a cap, and protect it from hungry rats and cats alike. Sits a perfect little goat cheese wrapped in basil leaves. Prim's gift to me on reaping day. I put the cheese carefully in my pocket as I slip outside. Our pot of District 12, nicknamed the Seam, is usually crawling with coal miners and heading out to the morning shift at this hour. Men and women with hunched shoulders, swollen knuckles, many who have long since stopped trying to scrub the coal dust off their broken nails, the lines of their sunken faces. But today the black cinder streets are empty. Shutters on the squat gray houses are closed. The reaping isn't until 2. Maybe as well sleep in, if you can. Our house is almost at the edge of the seam. I only have to pass a few gates to reach the scruffy field called the meadow. Separating the meadow from the woods, in fact enclosing all District 12, is a high chain-link fence topped with barbed wire loops. In theory, it's supposed to be electrified 24 hours a day at the deterrent of the predators that live in the woods, pack of wild dogs, lone cougars, bears that used to threaten our streets. But since we're lucky to get 2 or 3 hours of electricity an evening, it's usually safe to touch. Even so, I always take a moment to listen carefully for the hum that means the fence is alive. Right now, it's silent as a stone. Concealed by the clumps of bushes, I flatten out my belly and slide under the 2-foot stretch that has been loose for years. There are several other weak spots in the fence, but this one is so close to home, I always enter the woods here. As soon as I'm in the trees, I retrieve a bow and sheath from arrows from the hollow log. Electrified or not, the fence has been successful at keeping the flesh eaters out of District 12. Inside the woods, they roam freely, and they are added paths to follow, but they are also food if you know how to find it. My father knew, and he taught me some before he was blown to bits by a mine explosion. There was nothing even to bury. I was 11 then. 5 years later, I'm still awake screaming for him to run. Even though trespassing in the woods is illegal and poaching carries the severest of penalties, most people would risk it if they had weapons. But most of them are not bold enough to venture out with just a knife. My bow is a rarity, crafted by my father along with a few others that I kept well hidden in the woods, carefully wrapped in waterproof covers. My father could have made good money selling them, but if the officials found out, he would have been publicly executed for inciting a rebellion. Most of the peacemakers turn a blind eye to the few of us who hunt, because they are hungry for fresh meat as anybody is. In fact, they're among our best customers. But the idea that someone might be arming the scene would never be allowed. In the fall, a few brave souls sneak into the woods to harvest apples, but always in the sight of the meadow, always close enough to run back to safety of District 12 if trouble arises. District 12, where you can starve to death in safety, I muttered. Then I glanced quickly over my shoulder. Even here, even in the middle of nowhere, you worry someone might overhear you. When I was younger, I scared my mother to death. The thing I could blurt out about District 12 about people who rule our country. Payment from this far off country called the capital. Eventually I understood this will only lead to more trouble. So I learned to hold my tongue and to turn my features into indifferent masks that no one could ever read my thoughts. Do I work quietly at school, make only polite small talk with the public market, discuss little more than trades in the hop, which is the black market where I make most of my money. Even at home, where I'm less pleasant, I avoid discussing tricky topics, like the reaping, or food shortages, or the Hunger Games. Prim might begin to repeat my words, and where would we be? In the woods, with only one person with whom I can be myself. Gail. I can feel my muscles in my face relaxing, my pace quickening as I climb the hills to our place, a rock ledge overlooking a valley. The sight of him watching there brings a smile. Gail says I never smile except in the woods. Hey, Catnip, says Gail. My real name is Katniss, but when I was first told him, I barely whispered it, so I thought I was Catnip. Then when this crazy lynx started following me around in the woods looking for handouts, it became his official nickname for me. I finally had to kill the lynx because he scared off game. I almost regretted it because he wasn't bad company, but he got a decent price for his pelt. Look what I shot. Gil holds up a load of bread with an arrow stuck in it. I laughed. It's real bakery bread, not the flat, dense loaves we make from our grain rations. I take it in my hands, pull out the arrow, and hold the puncture in the crust to my nose, inhaling the fragrance that makes my mouth float with saliva. Fine bread like this is for a special occasion. Still warm, I said. He must have been at the bakery at the crack of dawn to trade for it. What did it cost you? Just a squirrel. The old man was feeling sentimental this morning, even wished me luck. Well, we all feel a little closer today, don't we? I said, not even bothering to roll my eyes. Prim left us the cheese. I pulled it out. His expression brightens at a treat. Thank you, Prim. We'll have a real feast. Suddenly he falls into a capital accent. He mimics Elf Trinket, the maniacally upbeat woman who arrives once a year to read out the names at the reaping. I almost forgot. Happy Hunger Games. He plucks a few blackberries from the bush around us. And may the odds, he tosses a berry in the high arc toward me. I catch it in my mouth and break the delicate skin with my teeth. The sweet tartness explodes on my tongue. Be ever in your favor. I finish with equal words. We have to joke about it because the alternative is to scare out of our wits. Besides, the capital accent is so affected that almost anything sounds funny in it. I watch as Gil pulls out his knife and slices the bread. He could be my brother. Straight black hair, olive skin, we have the same gray eyes. But we're not relaxed, at least not closely. Most of the families who work in the mines resemble one another in this way. That's why my mother and Prim, with their light hair and blue eyes, always look out of place. They are. My mother's parents were part of a small merchant class that caters to officials, peacemakers, and the occasional seams customer. They ran an apothecary shop in the nicer part of District 12. Since almost no one can afford doctors, apothecaries are our healers. My father got to know my mother because one of his hunts would sometimes collect medical herbs and sell them to her shop as he brewed into remedies. She must have really loved him to leave her home for the scene. I try to remember that when all I can see is the woman who sat back, blank and unreachable, while her children turned to skin and bones. I try to forgive her for my father's sake, but to be honest, I'm not the forgiving type. Gail spreads the bread slices and the soft goat cheese, carefully placing a basil leaf on each while I strip the bushes of their berries. We settle back into the nook in the rocks. From the place we are invisible, but we have a clear view of the valley, which is teeming with summer life, greens to gather, roots to dig, fish iridescent in the sunlight. This day is glorious, with the blue sky and the soft breeze. The food's wonderful, with the cheese seeping into the warm bread and the berries bursting in our mouths. Everything will be perfect in this real in if this really was a holiday, if all the day off meant was roaming the mountains with Gale, hunting for food supper. But instead, we have to be standing in a square at 2 o'clock waiting for the names to be called out. We could do, you know, what? Leave the district, run off, live in the woods. You and I, we could make it, says Gale. I don't know how to respond. The idea is so preposterous. If we didn't have so many kids, he asked quickly. They're not our kids, of course, but they might as well be. Gale's 2 little brothers and a sister Prim. And you know may as well throw in our mothers too, because how would they live without us? Who would fill their mouths that they are always asking for more. With both of us hunting daily, there are still nights when game has to be swapped for lard and shoelaces or wool. Still nights when we have to go to bed with our small stomachs growling. I never want to have kids. I might, if I didn't leave here, says Gale. But you do, I said, irritated. Forget it, he snaps back. The conversation feels wrong. Leave? How could I leave Prem, who is the only person in the world I'm certain I love? And Gale is devoted to his family. We can't leave. So why bother asking about it? And even if we did, where did this stuff about having kids come from? There has never been anything romantic between Gale and me. When we met, I was a skinny 12-year-old, and although he was only 2 years younger, he already looked out like a man. It took a long time for us to even become friends, to stop hanging around every tree and begin helping each other. Besides, if he wanted kids, Gale won't have any trouble finding a wife. He's good looking, he's strong enough to handle the work in mines, and he can hunt. He can tell by the ways girls whisper about him when he walks by in school that they want him. It makes me jealous, but not for the reason people think. Good hunting partners are hard to find. What do you want to do? We can hunt fish or gather. Let's fish at the lake. We can leave our poles and gather in the woods. Get something nice for tonight. He says, tonight. After the reaping, everybody's supposed to celebrate, and lots of people do, out of the relief that children have been spared for another year. But at least 2 families will pull their shutters, lock their doors, and try to figure out how they will survive the painful weeks to come. We make our will. The predators ignore us on the day when easier, tastier prey about. But late in morning we have a dozen fish, a bag of greens, and best of all, a gallon of strawberries. I found that patch a few years ago, but Gale had the ideas to string mesh nets around it to keep out the animals. On the way home, we swing by the Hob, the black maker that operates in the abandoned warehouse that once transported the coal directly from the mines to the trains, and the Hob gradually took over the space. Most businesses are closed by this time on reaping day, but the black markets are fairly busy. We easily trade 6 for the fish for good bread, the other 2 for salt. Grease say the bony old woman who sells bowls of hot soup from the large kettle takes half the greens off our hands in exchange for a couple chunks of parfait. We might do a tad better elsewhere, but we make an effort to keep our good terms with Greasy Say. She's the only one who can considerably be counted on to buy a wild dog. We don't hunt them on purpose, but if you're attacked and you have to take out the dog or 2, well, meat is meat. Once it's in the soup, I call it beef, Greasy Say with a wink. No one in the scene could turn up their nose at the good-legged wild dog. The peacemakers who come to the hog can afford to be a little choosier. When we finish our business at the market, we go to a back door in the mayor's house to sell half of strawberries, knowing he has a particular fondness for them and can afford their price. The mayor's daughter, Mage, opens the door. She's in her year at school. Being the mayor's daughter, you expect her to be a snob, but she's alright. She just keeps herself, like me. Since neither of us really has a group or friends, we seem to end up together a lot at school. eating lunch, sitting next to each other at assemblies, partnering for sports activities. We rarely talk, which suits us both fine. Together, her drab school outfit has been replaced by a expensive white dress, and her blonde hair is done up with a pink ribbon. Reaping clothes. Pretty dress, says Gail. May shot him a look, trying to see if he's genuine compliment or if just being ironic. It is a pretty dress, but she would never be wearing it ordinary. She presses her lips together and smiles. Well, if I end up going to the capital, I want to look nice, don't I? Now it's Gail's turn to be confused. Does she mean it, or is she messing with him? I guess the second. You won't be going to the capital, says Gail coolly. Her eyes land on a small circular pin that adorns her dress. Real gold. Beautifully crafted. It will keep a family in bread for months. Why can't you have 5 entries? I have 6 when I was 12 years old. That's not our fault. Well, it's no one's fault, just the way it is, says Gail. Major's face had become closed off. She puts the money for the beers in the head. Good luck, Katniss. You too, I said, and the door closes. We walked to the scene in silence. I don't like that Gil took a dig at Mage, but he's right, of course. The reaping system is unfair, with the poor getting the worst of it. You come eligible for the reaping the day you turn 12. That year your name is entered once, at 13, twice, and so on until you reach the age of 18, the final year of eligibility, when your name goes into the pool 7 times. That's true for every citizen in 12 districts for the entire country of Panem. But here's a catch. If you're poor and starving as we are, you can opt to add your name more times in exchange for dress. Each teresa is worth a year of supply of grain and oil for one person. You may do this for 12. I had my aim entered 4 times. Once because I had to, 3 times for teresa for grain and oil for myself, Prim and my mother. In fact, every year I have needed to do this, and the entries are cumulative. So now, at the age of 16, my name will be reaping 20 times. Gail, who is 18, has been either helping or single-handedly feeding the families of 5 for 7 years, which will have his name for 42 times. You can see why someone like me, who has never been at risk of needing a Teresa, can set him off. The chance of her name being drawn is very slim compared to those of who live in Seam. Not impossible, but slim. And even though the rules were set up by the capital, not the district, certainly not Mija's family, it's hard to resent those who don't have to sign up for Terrae. Gale knows his anger at Mage is misdirected. On other days, deep in the woods, I listen to him rant about how the trusts are just another tool to cause misery in our district. A way to plant hatred between the starving workers and the seam and those who can generally count on supper, and thereby ensure we will never trust one another. It's to the capital's advantage to have us divided among ourselves. You might say if there were no ears to hear, but mine. If it was a reaping day, if a girl with a gold pin and no Teresa had made what I'm sure she thought was a harmless comment. As we walk, I glance over at Gale's face, still smoldering, underneath a stony expression. His rages seem pointless to him. I do. But what good is yelling about the capital in the middle of the woods? It doesn't change anything. It doesn't make things fair. It doesn't fill our stomachs. In fact, it scares off the nearby game. I let him yell it though. Better he doesn't in the woods than in the district. Gale and I divide our spoils, leave 2 fish, a couple of loaves of good bread greens, a quart of strawberries, salt, paraffin, a bit of money for each. See you in the square, I said. Wear something pretty, says flatly. At home I found my mother and sister ready to go. My mother wears a fine dress from apothecary days. Prim is in my first reaping outfit, a skirt and ruffled blouse. It's a bit big for her, but my mother has made it stay with pins. Even so, she has trouble keeping the blouse tucked in at the back. The tub of warm water waits for me. I scrub up the dirt and swear up from the woods and even wash my hair. To my surprise, my mother has laid out one of her own lovely dresses for me, a soft blue thing with matching shoes. Are you sure? I said. I'm trying to get past rejecting offers from help from her. For a while, I'm so angry I wouldn't allow her to do anything for me, and this is something special. Her clothes are from her past and very precious to her. Of course. Let's put up your hair too, she says. I let her towel dry and braided it up in my head. I can hardly recognize myself in the cracked mirror that leans against the wall. You look beautiful, says Prim in a hushed voice. It's nothing like myself, I say. I want to hug her, because I know these next few hours will be terrible for her. Her first reaping. She's about as safe as you can get, since she's only entered once. I wouldn't let her take out a Teresa, but she's worried about me, and the unthinkable might happen. I protect Prim in every way I can, but I'm powerless against the reaping. The anguish I always feel when she's in pain wells up in my chest and threatens to register on my face. I notice her brows has pulled up to her skirt in the back again and force myself to stay calm. Tuck in your tail, little duck, I say, smoothing the black blouse back in place. Prim giggles and gives me a swell. Quack, quack yourself, I say with a light laugh, the kind only Prim can draw out of me. Come on, let's eat, I said, and plant a quick kiss on top of her head. The fish and greens are already cooking in the stew, but they will be for supper. We decide to save the strawberries and bakery bread for this evening meal, to make it speech, as we say. Instead, we drink milk from Prim's goat. Lady and we say. Instead, we drink milk from and eat the rough bread made from the tressa grain, eaten although no one has much appetite anyway. At 1 o'clock, we head for the square. Attendance is mandatory unless you're at death's door. This evening, officials will come around and check if this is the case. If not, you'll be imprisoned. It's too bad, really, that they can't hold a reaping in the square, one of the few places in District 12 that can be pleasant. The square is surrounded by shops, and it's public market day, especially if there's good weather, and it's a holiday feel in it. But today, despite the bright banners hanging on the buildings, there's an air of grimness. The camera crews perched on buzzards on the rooftops only add to the effect. People file in silently and sign in. The reaping is a good opportunity for the capital to keep tabs on the population as well. 12 through 18-year-olds are herded into roped areas marked out by ages, the oldest in the front, the young ones like Prim toward the back. Family members line up on the perimeter, holding tightly to their others' hands. But there are others too who have no one they love or at stake, who no longer care, who slip among the crowd. Odds are given on their ages, whether they're seam or merchant. They'll break down and weep. Most refuse dealing with the rakers, but carefully. These same people tend to the informers, and who haven't broken the law. I could almost jot at the daily basis of hunting for but the appendices of choose in the charge protect me. Not everyone can claim the same way. Anyway, Gail and I agree that we have no choice between dying of hunger and the bullet in the head. That bullet will be much quicker. The space gets tighter, more claustrophobic as people arrive. The square is quite large, but not enough to hold District 12's population of about 8,000. Latecomers are directed to the adjacent streets, which they can watch the events on screens that are television live in the state. I find myself standing in a clump of 16s from the scene. We all exchange terse nod, then focus our attention on the temporary stage that is set up before the Justice Building. It holds 3 tiers, a podium, 2 large glass balls, one for the boys and one for the girls. I stare at the paper slips in the girls' balls. 20 of them have been Karen Evergreen written on them careful handwriting. 2 of the 3 chairs fill up with Mage's father, Mayor Underseas, who is tall, balding man at every trinket. District 12 escort, fresh from the capital with her scary white grin, pinkish hat, and spring green suit. They murmur to each other and then look too concerned at the empty seat. Just as the town clock strikes 2, the mayor steps up on the podium and begins to read. It's the same story every year. He tells the history of Panem, the country that rose up in the ashes of the place that was once called North America. He lists the disasters, the drought, the storm, the fires, the increasing seas, and swallowed up so much of the land, and brutal war for what little substance remained. The result was Panem, the shining capital ringed by 13 districts, with broad peace and proposing to the citizens. Then came the dark days, the upspring of the districts against the capital. 12 were defeated, the 13th obliterated. The Treaty of Treason gave us the new laws to guarantee peace, and an early reminder of the dark days must be repeated. It gave us the Hunger Games. The rules of the Hunger Games simple. In punishment for the uprising, each of the 12 districts must provide one girl and one boy called tributes to participate. The 24 tributes will be imprisoned in a vast outdoor arena that could hold anything from a burning desert to a frozen wasteland. Over the period of several weeks, the competitors must fight to death. The last tribute standing wins. Take the kids from our district, forcing them to kill one another while we watch. This is the capital way of reminding us that how totally we were at their mercy, how little chance who would stand at surviving another rebellion. Whatever words they use, the real message is clear. Look at how we take your children and sacrifice them, and there is nothing you can do. If you can lift a finger, we will destroy every last one of you, just as we did in District 13. To make it humiliating as well as torturous, the capital requires us to treat the Hunger Games as a festivity, a sporting event, pitting every district against another. The last tribute alive receives a life of ease back home, and their district will be showered with prizes, largely consisting of food. All year, the capital will show the winning district gifts of grain and oil and even delicacies like sugar, while the rest of us battle starvation. It is both a time for repentance and time for thanks, intones the mayor. Then he reads a little past District 12 victors. The 74 years we had exactly 2. Only one is still alive. Hamish Abernethy, a ponky, middle-aged man who was at this moment appearing hollering something unintelligible, staggers onto the stage and falls into a third chair. He's drunk. Very. The crowd responds with a token of applause, but he's confused and tries to give every trinket a big hug, which he barely manages to fend off. The mayor looks distressed. Since all the things is being television, now the District 12 is a laughing stock of paranoid, and he knows it. He quickly tries to pull the attendance back to the reaping by enjoying every trinket. Bright and bubbly as ever, every trinket trots the podium games and gives her signature. Happy Hunger Games as makes the odds ever in your favor. Her pink hair must be awake because her curls have shifted slightly off center since her encounter with Hamish. She goes on a bit about what an honor it is to be here, although everyone knows she's just aching to get bumped into the better district when they have proper victories, but not drunk who molest you in front of the entire nation. Through the crowd, I spot Gail, looking back at me with the ghost of a smile. As reapings go, this is when at least has a light entertainment factor. But suddenly I'm thinking of Gail and his slightly 42 knees in the big ball glass, and how the odds are not in his favor. Not compared to a lot of the boys. And maybe he's thinking the same thing about me, because his face darkens turns away. There's still thousands of slips. I wish I could whisper to him. It's the time of the drawing. Every trinket says she was always does. Ladies first, and crosses the glass ball with the girl's name. She reaches in, digs her hands deep into the ball, and pulls out a slip of paper. The crowd draws her name, collective breath, and then you can hear a pin drop, and I feel nauseous and desperately hoping it's not me, that it's not me, that it's not me. Every trinket crosses back to the podium, smooths the list of paper, and reads out in a clear voice, and it's not me. It's Primrose Evergreen.